Welcome to the world of martial arts TV. This is me, Andrew Staton, and we're talking to Mick Shore. I don't know actually how to express your title these days because it's extensive. But let's deal with something really phenomenal, is that you started in Yorkshire and you've gone to Ireland. What made that move, and have you taken JKD with you?
Well, what happened there, Andy, was you're actually a Yorkshire Irish man.
Okay.
That's how it comes about. And I was meant to be born in Ireland. And back in the day, my father's Irish and my mother's got an Irish father. But the thing was, I was supposed to be born in Ireland, near where we actually live now. And due to some medical complications, they were a bit wary. They came over to England. So I was born a Yorkshire man. So that's how I ended up, over in Yorkshire being born. So, But the long and short of it was, my parents came back here for a couple of years, and I was brought up here for a couple of years, and then my father moved back for work. But the thing was, as you can imagine, being brought up someone of mixed parentage in the 70s over in England, you basically, there was a lot of taunting, a lot of bullying. So I had to learn martial arts to defend myself. And along the way, over the years, obviously JKD became a part of that. And one of these things is like everyone's passed away now, and I'm in the family home now. So I've basically come back home.
Have you taken JKD back to Ireland then? That's what we're saying.
Oh, most definitely. Well, it's part of me. So,
so the story is the Yorkshire-born man taken JKD back to Ireland. Yes.
Yes.
Excellent.
Well,
excellent.
It's always been part of me. So I always wonder what happened if I took, what happens if I took it out of me? What would happen to me? Sure, I don't know.
I know. So basically, Mick, this is a kind of so people get to know you a little bit more. So can you first of all tell us your martial arts journey? I think you touched on it a minute ago, but let's have it from you on your journey right up to the JKD bit, and then I want to move into where Larry comes into it. But so if you can take us that far and let's know how you became so involved with martial arts and what's your passion? What drove you to become such a martial artist?
Well, like I said, what I touched on earlier was a lot of people would start martial arts up for was bullying. But being bullied at school, I got a lot of racism as well. So a lot of racist stuff, a lot of bullying. So my dad decided to, take me to judo. My father, by the way, loved wrestling, and he'd take me to watch wrestling matches, but there were no wrestling schools in the area at the time. So what he did was he took me to the next thing, judo. So I was 7 years old. He enrolled me in the judo class, and I started throwing my bullies left, right, and centre who'd been bullying me. And
I tell you what, Mick, just stop there, because I'm sure this is being 7-year-old or 8-year-old when you'd learnt judo. Tell us your first encounter where somebody bullied you and you just sort of like got that self-confidence to do something. That would be a great story.
Well, one of the first ones I had was there was a lad in the school, and he was a year above me, and he was an Italian lad, and for some reason he took it to picking on me, even though he was a year above. So I remember I'd learned so many classes, and he went to grab hold of me, and I put my foot into his stomach. I did what we call a tomonagi. Your foot into the stomach and you roll back. And I rolled back and I threw him, and we was on, I remember, like a little bit of a slant, like a rockery. Yeah. And he went straight flying back into all these thistles and stuff. And then I felt great afterwards because I had this tiny, skinny kid. But then he went home, obviously covered in nettle stings, and his mother came in, and she was a big Italian lady. And they called my father in, and they called his mother in, and we both lived down the road from each other, really. And when they brought my father in, and me little skinny fella, and then they brought his mother in, and she looks at the son, and she was like, "You did this little fella did this to you, and why did he did it? You was being bullied." And she was like, "You're like," why? And she's cursing him in Italian, wants to slap him more out of the teacher's office, So There you go.
Yeah. Right. Let's continue. But I knew there'd be a story there, and it's just lovely to get that little story. Continue with your journey, please.
Yeah, so the basic thing was then, that did me in good stead. I got to about 12 and a half, 13 years old, and I decided to take up Lau Gar Kung Fu. Now, the Lau Gar was good, but the only thing was it taught me semi-contact. And there were scuffles as you would come, what had happened. But next I found out, because I was taught to pull the punch, instead of using the judo, I stopped doing judo and I got taken in by all the kung fu film type of stuff. You know, if it worked for Jackie Chan, it's got to work for me. And I was trying really traditional type techniques on people, and I was just getting punched or, you know, thrown through the air or whatever. So I found out that for a couple of years next, and I started getting the tables turned against me. And I was like, I'd go back to teaching. I think, no, I'd use judo and it was great for one-on-one, but against multiples, this is hard. And a couple of the guys who had dealt with younger with judo decided they found out that I was no good at one-on-one, one versus multiple versus judo. So they started attacking me in groups. And I was trying to use all these snake fists and you name it, and none of it was working. And then I was getting punched in the face, and the instructor would say, work on your stances more, work on your blocks more, work. It wasn't working. So what I did was, my dad got me a set of weights, and he says, you need to build up because you're just a scrawny little fella. If you've got a bit more powerful physical presence, people won't even think about trying. So I started the weight, started some chin-ups, and I started to sprout, you know, muscles here and there. And got to a certain age, and that put people off a bit, because then they see you're bigger, you know, just mistakenly, a lot of people do. They just think they're bigger. They think, oh, no, I better not start it with them now. It can hit harder. And then from that, I was okay. And, you know, I actually found out through basically a lot of, like, you know, just a few little escapes here and there. I call them lucky little encounters where I come across and just by chance got myself out of trouble. You know what I mean? And when I did do stuff, it always come back to the judo stuff. If I did do what I found worked, the odd punch, the odd kick had worked, but I had no proper training in, say, boxing or kickboxing by then. And then at 18, I decided to go down to London working because there was no work in Yorkshire. And I went down there, and anybody working from the north down there got a lot of stick from southerners. So there were a few scuffles down there as well. You know, just because we were down there stealing the jobs and whatever. They accused of us taking their women as well, but I digress on that.
That's very naughty. Very naughty.
I know, yeah. So we was down there from Yorkshire.
Good for you, lad. Good for
you. Down there from Yorkshire, and you'd have to hand yourself again. But anyway, I moved back after a couple of years at 21, at 20, about 20, 21. And I thought, this time I want to get into a martial arts a bit more, rather than just the Lau Gar and the stuff. I mean, I'd always continued my trading, always down London. I met other people who did Kung Fu, so I always trained with a few other Lau Gar people who I knew down in London. So I kept that training up, but I wanted something. There was something I was looking for, and it wasn't there. And I wanted something there, and I needed something. And what it was I saw an advert for Filipino martial arts, Escrima.
All right.
Of all places in Doncaster. And beside it was boxing as well. And I thought, right, I want to look at that. And I went out to a guy out in Hemingway, out near Selby. And a little guy. It was only a small little guy. And I remember pulling up thinking, God, where is this guy? And he said to me, oh, I'm going to take you we're going to train at the academy. Or no, the institute. Right. By then, the institute to me, when anybody said institute or academy, I'd been reading all about Dan and Santos Academy. So if you're telling me Filipino Institute, Filipino Academy, I was hoping for, well, in a Santo Academy and somewhere in Yorkshire somewhere. And when I went out there, it was just a little church hall in the middle of Edinburgh. And I'm waiting for the guy, and I thought, there's no guy here, you know. And I asked this bloke who was there, a little fella with glasses and ginger hair, do you know this guy, Dave? And he said, it's me. And I thought, oh, no, I thought it's never this guy. He only looks about 9 stone, but I'd mistakenly, you know, not thought it was him. And he took me in, started teaching me the stick work and, you know, started teaching me the Kali, empty hands. And then he said to me, he says, you know, have you ever done boxing, sparring? And I says, yeah, I've sparred before. Oh, come on Saturday, we'll bring some gloves. And I thought I was going to be doing some of the old semi-contact stuff again, but little did I know, and I was in for a great big surprise. And we got the gloves on, and there was a few other lads in the class, a load of squaddies and that, and it was proper full-on boxing. And I had a right lesson taught to me, you know. It was proper full-on boxing, whereas all the other stuff I'd done, backhand, ridge hand, semi-contact stuff, never once aiming for the face. This was everything to the face, stomach, everything. It was like, put your guard up and everything. And I remember a lad saying, come on, we're testing your character. And I thought, I don't know what they're on about, test my character. I'm like, I am a nice person. I'll buy you a meal. I'll buy you something to drink. I'm a nice guy. I didn't understand. And afterwards, we all went for a beer. I just had a shandy. And I remember looking at this shandy and the blood trickling in my glass in the beer and shaking. And they're all saying, it's not bad, is it, mate? Once you get used to it with those pillows in, it's a good laugh, innit? I'm like, yeah. And they said, you'll be back next week, won't you? I'm like, yeah. And in my head, I was thinking, I can't wait to do one and get out of here. You know what I mean? But something inside of me drove me. And my father was one of these things where it don't matter how hard things got in life, when he first moved over to England when younger, he would not give up at all. So that drove me. And there was that drive inside me, the same for my mother, that incredible drive taught to me to not give up. And I came back and I thought, I'm going back again. And my mother was like, what the hell, are you mad? You know, I used to come back each week and my mother would say to me, you know what, how do you let that man do that to you? Like I had a choice. And she'd say, I'd be on the phone arranging a lesson and my mother would be like, let me speak to him. No, Mum, you're not speaking to my instructor on the phone. I always feared what happened if my mother ever got hold of my instructor. Like she was going to give him a good thing, bashing. She was like, look at my poor son coming back with black eyes. But anyway, from that, he started introducing me to things. And one week I'd go up and he'd say, you've ever heard of Savat? I'm like, no, here. Boom, Savat kick. Oh, my God. Next thing, oh, this is Jun Fan. Boom, trap. What the hell's that? Next pendulum kick to the leg. Wow, you know, never felt it before. Then one day walked in, this is Muay Thai. Which is Muay Thai. So what you do is introduce me to JKD concepts and a little bit of Jun Fan. And then one day it was like, this is a bit of Silat. And for some reason, I always liked, even when I was doing Filipino arts, JKD concepts for everyone, I was always a grappler amongst the group. I was always the guy who excelled at the grappling. And even in my 20s, there's a few of them, even a few instructors says, you know what, you're going to end up training with Larry Hartsell one day. You end up training with him. You're destined. You're going to be with him. And I'm like, yeah. I'd read about Larry at 12 years old. I had his book and it inspired me because it made sense. When I looked at his book, I've got his book over here. And if you look at the book, and we've got enter to trap to grapple. And I had this book. And it made such absolute sense to me because the fights, what had worked for me, were where I'd got in quickly and threw the guy, enter, you trap in, and grapple the guy. And watching my first Bruce Lee movie I watched was Game of Death. That's the first one I'd ever watched. I'll tell you why, by the way. Right? We're strict, like Catholic family with my mother growing up. Any signs of nudity in a film, I sort of like asked friends, is there any, boobs out or anything in the film? If there is, we're not watching it. Right? So Game of Death was like, I'd passed the boob-free thing. Right? So I got to watch Game of Death and I watched it, and then it was like, all the trapping, I'm like, it makes sense. Look what he's doing to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And what, Larry says, get in, throw, trap, grapple, you can strike, stay at that range. And I thought all the other stuff I'd tried had got me in trouble. But as soon as I threw the person, or I got into clinch range, it was all home sailing from there on. So I always excelled, even amongst all the Filipino guys at the grappling arts. And from that, I decided I liked a little bit of Silat. But again, just by chance, I was down in Luton. I was training on a Filipino seminar, and I met a guy, Glenn Lobo, who did Malaysian Silat Lincha, which actually specialized in throws and locking as well as hard striking. And I started training Pencak Silat or Malay Silat. And I started training Silat, and I stuck with that alongside the Kali for about 10 years. And
Wow.
like I said, that was known for its grappling. And like a horse to water, I went straight into the grappling. So I was training a lot of the Silat. And then, because I love the weapons side as well, I also decided to get into the full contact stick fighting at the time, what was around at the time with the armour. And did a few competitions at that, ended up getting on the British team. And then next thing I was fighting on the British team in Albacete in Spain in 1997, chasing people around with sticks. So that took me quite through into the mid-90s. And then the long and short it was, again, I was always that bit itchy feet. And I was like, I'd love to train with Larry. I just want to train with Larry. You know, I want to train with Larry. I've got to train with him. Because I end up grappling, no matter what I'm doing. If I'm doing Silat, if I'm doing Kali, whatever I do, everybody's telling me, you're the grappler. And I don't know if it was because I started in Judo, influence from watching wrestling, but I kept getting drawn to the grappling. So I went to a seminar. And my first seminar was a disaster because I got the wrong day. And I went all the way to Manchester. And, you know, back in those days, people don't realise now, you know, you're saving up for a seminar and it could be like 35, 45, whatever quid it was. You know, saving up for it was one thing and then getting there was another. So we went all the way to Manchester and we got over there. Oh, my God, I remember hearing these bangs and belts on the wall and these massive noises coming out before we even got into the sports hall. Wow. My mates, and a mate of mine turned to me and said, Mickey, I think we better turn back. That's why he said they're killing each other in there. You can hear people being bounced off the walls. Look at the noises coming on. So I thought, bloody hell, you know. So me, no, we're not going back. We paid for it. We got the ticket. We went in. And I went in. And the bouncing, by the way, were people playing five-a-side inside, playing football in the sports hall. And the ball bouncing off and the amplification of the noise. That's all it was. And I said, Larry Hartsell seminar. I said, oh, you missed it. It was yesterday. I know. So gutted. We went straight away on the next one and fell in love with everything what he had to say. And I decided I want to train more. And I started training in Manchester with his UK representative, Chris Brown. And Chris took me through the grappling, the Jun Fan, everything, you know. And then there was another guy, he's an instructor who taught alongside him, Steve Jones. And he took me through stuff like Chi Sao, the wooden dummy work, as well as Russian Sambo and other grappling arts. And I was training with them. So I was training this all the way, at the same time. I was still training Kali, still training my boxing. I'm still training the Silat. I'm training this as well. I'll be traveling to Manchester every Tuesday, and then another weekend I'll be traveling down to Luton. I was just traveling all over the place, training. And I was teaching so I could train. And, you know, that was it. I taught a few privates. They paid for my privates. I taught a class to pay for my classes. And at the time, it was pretty good that I was mainly single. That's all I've got to say. Because all the money could come in and go out, and I could spend it on martial arts completely. Okay. Yeah. But when I did meet what's now my wife, Marie, she actually pushed me forward. She actually did push me forward. And she was like, you know, this is what you're going to do. This is what you've got to train. And we did find ways. Thank God she's great at budgeting. You know, she can make a fiver go a long way. Like, so she was great at budgeting, and she could help me out. Look, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to train. So after training with Chris, you know, he introduced me to Sifu Larry because I'd always trained with him on seminars. So one day he introduced me to him, and I was in Wales, and he introduced me to him, and there was just me and him sat at the table, and you know, it's all in my book basically. But the introduction, he looked at me and he was like, like, what the heck do I say to him? They're just me and him opposite each other. Someone who I've admired since young, and he broke the silence. I think you could see, you know, probably a bit uncomfortable. And he says, do you enjoy having a drink? To that effect, by the way. I says, yes. And he says, good. He says, let's go have a good beer. And that was it. And we just got on like a house on fire. And then every time I seen Larry, we got on great. We'd train, and he used me as one of the dummies and stuff. And then we'd do tours in the UK, and Chris would take me and Chris would accompany Larry to all the tours through the UK, would help organise the tours, and we'd stay with him. And we'd look so forward to him coming over. Because won't we just like to one seminar? We might go to Newcastle, to Wales, to Doncaster, and down. It'd be like a martial arts holiday for us all. You know, there'd be me, Deborah Hartsell, Larry Hartsell, Chris Brown, and we'd go around with them all. And it was great fun. And then Chris turned to me and he says, Mick, he says, I put you forward as UK rep. I went, pardon? He says, yeah. He says, I've taught you all I can. And he says, you're better at this stuff than me. He said, I like to stay in the background. He says, you've got more gift of the gab. He says, you get yourself out. And he says, you train with Larry now. And he said, you be the rep for the UK. And I said, no, I don't do that. You're my instructor. And I said, well, it's too late. I've done it. I said, what do you mean done it? He says, you're going to be UK rep now. I said, wow. And he says, anyway, Larry's waiting for you. I said, what do you mean waiting? He said, waiting for you to go out and train with him now. He said, I'm passing you on. You need to go on to a higher level of instruction than I can give you. And that to me was amazing, because not many martial arts, a lot of martial arts instructors will not pass you on when they know, you know, they'll keep hold of you and they'll actually keep you in second. But no, Chris put me forward and he said, wow, I've shown you everything I can. I need to take you to that next level. And I always thank you. One of the most humble martial artists I ever met is Chris Brown. And he put me forward, and the next thing, but I'm flying over the skies going into Los Angeles.
Thank you. What was exceptional? You've talked about Larry being a sort of like a beacon for you to go to, but when you were with Larry, what do you think was his exceptional skills? He'd worked with Bruce, and Bruce must have seen something with him, and always put Larry quite high up the ladder. What do you feel Larry brought to the table that Bruce saw in him that was exceptional?
Reality, pure and simple. Realness, the ability to be able to do stuff. And he'd often do stuff. He'd be showing stuff, and he'd say to me, oh, I got taught this. And then he'd go on the doors or do security work, for example, that night. And he'd try a technique Bruce had taught him that day. Yeah. So he was going out and trying it out and seeing if it worked. I mean, the thing is, well, there's some things Larry will say to you, and he'll look back and he'll say, I wasn't proud of some things. He said, just it was as it was. He said, like when he came back from Vietnam, he mentioned in one of his books, he come back from Vietnam, and you can imagine those guys coming back, especially someone like Larry, did 2 tours, lost a lot of his friends over there. And he said he came back and he said, Bruce did his research. And he says, I was sort of doing my own research, if you want to call it that. And he says, basically, he'd go out to smokers, what they call smokers, what we know now is like unlicensed boxing fights. Yeah. You know, and he'd go to smokers. They call them because people gambling, smoking, drinking, and he'd go and fight in smokers. So he said there wasn't trouble coming to the doors when he were doing security to test out what works in JKD. He'd go out and test it in the ring, you see. So we'd be finding out what worked. And what he brought to the table for me was that thing of not just being able to show people. We all know he could show people the link, how to go, that he told everyone, look, grappling, ignore it at your peril. You need to grapple. A lot of fights will end up in the grappling range. If you don't get that first shot in and knock the guy out, or you don't step on your feet, you could quickly end up into grappling range. And he says, so learn to grapple. If you don't at least learn how to get back up off the floor, how to throw a person, or know some clinch work at least. He says, otherwise you can find yourself in trouble. But what I found the biggest thing, what he brought to the table, was the reality factor. Because he tried stuff out, what Bruce taught him, and as Dan Inosanto called him, Brewer Dan called him the premier Jeet Kune Do street fighter of our time. He had that much real street fight experience. And I say this, I've often said this, I'd put it down there and bet. I'd say probably more real life street fight experience than if I got most JKD instructors and put them in a room together, because that was his thing. He'd had lots and lots of real street fight experience. So when he taught, he was able to teach from real life experience and what worked in real life. Like a lot of times he'd be showing me trapping sequences and people are like, yeah, trapping doesn't work, blah, blah, all the rest of it. You get all these things. And he showed me a trap and he said, like, when you're doing security and you're guarding someone, you're going into the door and your hand's here and you're talking to one guy here and your hand's there. And it was showing me how he applied it in security work, what Bruce Lee had taught him, trapping and that. And he took it in a different angle. So the reality and making it work in reality was what I saw. The big thing what Larry brought to the table, where a lot of people can just be, well, this is technique, this works because of this works in the gym. Larry was, this works in reality, and he was able to bring that to the table. It doesn't matter if it was boxing, it was trapping, it was grappling. He could tell you how it works in the street. And, even Eric Paulson, someone asked him once, I was on a seminar, so what's the difference? And Sensei Eric was saying, well, we've got punch, kick, trap, grapple. When we do this ring, he says, Larry stuff, he says it's more what I do, but what on the street, and he's applied it different for street work, and that's what I thought he brought to the table, that realness. Plus, he was very humble, quietly spoken. In fact, people, if you never hearing aid with you around him, he was that quietly spoken, and but even though he was a tough guy, very humble and very friendly with it. So he was able to bring a lot of things to the table. One is the reality, and also the lack of ego he was able to bring. All these other people would walk in, all these arms folded, and Larry would be he just wasn't bothered with that. He just didn't have nothing to prove. He had nothing to show. He could do it. So he had nothing to prove,
Yeah. There's been I'd say about 3 books done by Larry. I see that you've shown one of them. If you want to show it again, that was the first one, I think. And then there was a couple more came out. How useful are they for somebody who's looking at those kind of things? Yeah. So how useful are those books, do you feel?
The early ones, they're all good, and you can glean something from them. But like all 80s books, the first couple, they're very much, they're like black and white picture books. And I feel they're a guide. They're a guide. They don't replace an instructor.
Yeah.
But if you were stuck in, in the middle of the, I don't know, Amazon jungle and had nothing else, you could glean a lot of insight still. If you've got no choice and you've only got a book, it's better than nothing. And people can still glean a lot of insight from the books. I mean, you look in here and you'll see like there's locks being done, and you can work out quite a lot of what's being done when he's showing like leg locks and whatnot. You know what I mean? But I think nothing can replace being an instructor. And I say this myself because when I was younger, I had entrance trapping to grappling and I had the Filipino martial arts. And I remember looking at Dan and Asanto's pictures where you twirl something with a stick and thinking, how do I, how do I do this? And we're showing a florette with a stick, but the arrows are going on the page, and you're going, trying to make it work. You know what I mean? And so, but when you've got someone to teach you how to rotate and use your arm, it's a lot better, an instructor. So you can definitely gain something from it, and they're both good books. My favourite ones, though, come in, the first 2 are good, then comes in this one.
Right. Yeah.
And this one is a lot more explanative, and there's some great drills in here. You go through all the stuff. You still got the black and white pictures, but you've got more explanation on the bottom. And there's also interviews which go in depth with Larry, and you've got lots of interviews. And then they did this one, and that's another good one because you've got lots of written work and lots of stuff to do with the interviews with him and his thoughts on stuff, the Jeet Kune Do approach. So I like, even though I love the first 2 ones, I think like everything else, you get better writing, and the next 2 are, how can you say, a lot of the end fruit of his research. That's the way I put it. if I was doing a book, I would hope that my book now on martial arts, when I was in my 60s, 70s, it would show a accumulation of everything I've done and culminating in the fruit of all my studies, that type of thing. And I think those later books show that.
Yeah, Mick, you've done a book of yourself. Can you tell us the title of the book, your own book?
So the book is Sticks and Stones and Other Shenanigans. On there, you can see the back. A lot of people actually ask me why I called it Sticks and Stones, and basically, quickly, it goes back to the first thing of, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names may never hurt me. But names do hurt you, of course, when you're being a kid, being teased, especially racial taunts. But the other thing was as well, if you notice on here, I'm actually holding a proper Irish shillelagh here. And the sticks and stones down here in Tipperary, if you say sticks and stones, they used to refer to the sticks were the bata or the shillelagh, and the stones they used to say were that refers to what people call the stone chuckers. And what it was like when the guys would go into battle in faction fighting, the wives would back them up with slingshots from stone chuckers. So sticks and stones, it has a double meaning. So it's got the Irish side to it, and it's also got the sticks and stones with the rhyme.
There's a reveal. There's a total reveal. Fantastic. Thanks, Mick. And can you tell us a bit about the book and what you feel somebody should get out of the book?
Well, first off, I didn't want to write a book about martial arts. I wanted to write a biography. And I wanted the biography to, first off, it was partly a way of grieving. I'd lost my father, and I was like, the greatest man who I ever knew, who inspired me. And I thought, I want to tell his story because people need to know what makes me. And what makes me was my parents, you see, and my father, the big influence. So I start off writing about me being bullied as a kid, what it was like, and I hope I could inspire people who are bullied or get a lot of racism thrown at them when younger, that they can get through this like I did and grow to be stronger and use that hate and anger against them and turn it into something positive and stronger. And that's one thing I wanted to do. So what I did was I did my story, and then I go so far with the bullying and everything, what it's like growing up in an Irish family in the 1970s in the UK. And then, it goes into my Irish side and everything, what it was like coming here on holidays and meeting my Irish family. And then, of course, it goes to what I just told you guys as well, the bullying side at school, what it was like in the 80s at school, the era, the fashions, the music. So you get everything around you, everything what it was like. So people have a good picture of what it was like to be brought up in those areas, in that scene and area, sorry. And then I go through my martial arts study, what martial arts teachers I train with. But then I come back to a thing. Now, I actually said before I go on, I must tell you my background, and I'm going to my father and my uncles who heavily influenced me. Basically, my father and my uncles both got respect through this. They were scrappers. So the way they got respect was through fists and mind and this. So I mentioned their story. So I go through my father's story, coming to Birmingham in the 50s, what it was like when it was like, you had hotels, what I said, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs, this type of stuff. And he got a lot of anti-Irish resentment. So, and the only way he could use what was it? So similar to Seafool Larry, somebody somebody insults you or gives you this, wallop. So the thing was, say was my uncle. So I write about them, and then I write about there's a good two chapters on my Irish side, on my family, my mother and all that. And then I go back up to my side. So I thought it was important to tell their side so people can see what made me fight, what made me dig deep inside. And it came from them. So I told their story to a degree as well. So, or part of their story. And then I go through my martial arts, who I've trained with. I go through my Silat teachers, my JKD teachers, my Kali teachers, my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu years, training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with the best in the world, starting up a full-time gym, the hardships involved, the craziness involved in the MMA scene, training fighters, opening up MMA gyms, having even the first cage, one of the first places in the north to have a cage. It was crazy. You know, people won't realise at the time. You might as well have been doing unlicensed dog fighting in the days, having a cage in your gym. Honest to God.
Yeah.
So, sorry, Andy.
Yeah, so it sounds a great book. But as now you move to Ireland, where are you taking your journey now? Is people still be able to get onto a seminar or train with you, or what do you want to do?
Well, what happened was, after running martial arts for 25 years teaching in the UK, I decided I wanted to take something, if I would come over here, I wanted to take a step back. I didn't want to be in a town centre in a gym. And I'm very much goal orientated. I need something to challenge me. You know what I mean? A goal. I need something to aim towards. And I felt by the time I got to 50, I'd achieved literally most of those goals I wanted to do. I'd got into a second full-time centre, and I thought, right, I've done it. I've been a full-time centre, and I thought, do I really want to, though, stay in this gym for the rest of my life till I'm 70 odd years old in the town centre in Doncaster, teaching? No, I don't. I just didn't want to do it. I'd got to that pinnacle. What do you do now? Do you just bring people in, bring people out? My own personal growth had started to slow. And COVID happened. And I started actually doing a lot of meditation training and Wim Hof training. And through that, more time to think, more thought. And my wife, she's a yoga teacher, by the way, so she inspired me to do more sit and think, take time away from fighting, do more yin as well as yang and all this type of thing. So I did, and it gave me time to think. And when we went back, it was really hard because obviously a lot of martial arts instructors, you went from 20 people in the class to all of a sudden not being allowed more than 6 or 4 or so to space. So I was like, God, we've got to build this all the way back up from bottom to what I had before. And then the news had come through just a bit before that I'd inherited my family's property over here in Ireland. So I was like, you know what? I said to my wife, you know what? Rather than build back up again from scratch, let's just close it all here, you know, rather than have to go back from what we've had to do. Let's start fresh. I said, what do you think? And she's in love with over here. She loves Ireland. So she was like, let's go for it. Right? She says, let's go for it. And she said, why not? She said, we're living in the countryside. There's 5 acres of ground around me. I wake up in the morning, I don't see people. I see my nearest neighbours are some rabbits. Do you know what I mean? So we're in the countryside. It's beautiful. I've got the Tipperary Mountains in front of me. But then I says, I have another idea. And she said, what? I said, what I want to do is teach people martial arts, also the health side, physical training, and also stuff like yoga, meditation side, the importance of that. So I said, what do you think? And she was like, yeah, she says, that sounds great. I said, well, what I want to do is give people a new experience, a really good all-in experience.
And you're basically not only, just you're going to open it up for all sorts of things. So could you tell us a little bit about that again, and repeat what you just said, and go over what your new journey is in Ireland?
Well, what we wanted to do was, after 25 years of teaching in full-time academies, we'd done the running of the full-time thing. We'd done it successfully. COVID happened. We come out past that and we said, look, we have to, do we go back to doing that, you know, that it's not a 9 to 5 grind in a martial arts school. It's more like 9 to 9. You put a 12 or 13 hour day in. So we didn't want to go back to that. We didn't want to go back to being stuck in a town centre doing the same thing for another 20, 30 years. We wanted something different. So when we moved out here, you know, I was like passed on my ancestors' property to me, my family's property, and we've got a lot of ground around here. And we says, right, what we want to start doing, look at doing camps. And my thing was to do camps using my knowledge of JKD, grappling, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Kali, Silat, whatever, and my wife's knowledge of yoga and meditation and wellness, and put them together. So we said, we realize a lot of our students as well, we're not getting younger, a lot of them getting older. So we have to keep them going. So what I want to do is, there's camps I hold with my wife here, which are like, example, I'll show them the mobility from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or Silat, how to get up off the floor, this type of stuff. And my wife will show them yoga exercises for that. And then we'll combine breathing, breath work, things like that. So it's towards being healthier as well as being, because if you're not healthy, if you're not mobile, if you're not strong, you can't do martial arts, can you? If you can't get out of a chair type of thing. So I realised that bit's important. Now, on the martial arts side, I decided we are going to have a big summer JKD camp each year. And that was the thing, big JKD camp. So we've got it set up over here where we have an indoor gym, where we have an inside mat area, which has all been done. We already had toilets and things built over here. So I have a private area, which is private invitation-only camping. So I've got a campsite, and that's for people coming in. So it's not open to general public, it's just private only for students who are coming to train with me. So they can camp in a tent. They've got shower, they've got toilets, all being built for them. So when they come to a camp, they're getting the full experience. They don't have to go anywhere else to stay here, unless they don't like camping, of course. Okay. They can do it all on one area, and they can come here, camp, train. So we've done 2 camps so far, and we've done a successful one in August, and we had people come from from Ireland. We had people come from, let's see, in England, from Yorkshire, Bridlington, Bristol, and London, and they all come over to Ireland. So they stayed over here, they camped, and what I did was, some of the camps we do it where they bring their own tent, or they can hire a tent, and everything's there for them. The tent is put up, the sleeping bag and everything, and they just come up and they do the training. And on top of that, as well as being a martial arts teacher and, sorting all the area out for them, camping and teaching them, my wife is teaching them the yoga. But on top of that, I also take them out and as a tour guide of the area, because we're near a tourist area. Fantastic. So I take them out, show them the tourist area, show them a bit of Ireland around here, and then introduce them to a bit of Guinness in the evening.
Mick, that's a fantastic thing, and it sees that you still, and I suppose you still do seminars if people want you to come, you can still do
definitely seminars. Yeah, definitely. I've got one. There's supposed to be one this year, but I forgot what happened. There's supposed to be one this year, and it got postponed. It got postponed. We had too much going off here, and it got put on. I injured myself. Forget about me injury. I injured myself, so I couldn't go out. But I've got one next year, supposedly just in the. It's not to be finalised. That's going to be. It should be in Canada. Okay, so I've gone out to Canada quite a few times, so there should be one in Canada next year, and maybe the UK as well. So, because at the moment, in this last year, we've been setting everything up for the last year or so here. We've been busy here. But yeah, seminars next year, I think, are Canada, probably the UK. And of course, over here, I do seminars over here. And what I do now is for people who can't get here in person, like we've got a Christmas camp over here. So for the Christmas camp, I realise a lot of people can't get over here. And obviously, they're not going to go camping here in winter unless they're really hardcore. So what they do is they join online via Zoom. So I give the option now, attend in person or attend via Zoom. And I've got a few students in Canada. I've got a few students in France, some over in different countries. So they can attend by Zoom. And then the warmer weather, they can, do the best to get over here and train in person. We have a 3 to 4 day camp. But a lot of people, they come in on a Thursday and they leave on the Monday. And a lot of people, what they started doing now, once they've been here, because it's so beautiful around here, what they start doing is they come in on the Thursday and they leave on a Wednesday. They spend a couple more days just touring the area. Yeah, they make a holiday of it. They bring the wives, partners over and have a little tour of Ireland, and I give them advice where to go.
I want to just bring something in here just to show you that you're not just a martial artist, but you have like most of us, we are apt in other interests as well. And I'd just like you to bring on, I don't know if we'd put this in the interview, but just in case Will thinks it's good enough to go in. Mr. Shore, you have a personal interest in scooters, I hear. Can you tell us a little bit about scooters?
My first Lambretta or scooter I was introduced to was when I was probably about, it was around the same time I was doing judo, around those years. So probably around 75, 76. And there was a fellow Irish family in the area, and they used to be into all the Lambrettas, and they were also into the Northern Soul era of the time, you know, so all that type of music. And I was fascinated by it all. And somebody said, do you want to, you know, can we give him a lift on the back? And I went cool as hell sat on the back of an Okra GP Lambretta until going along through woodland, only slow. I bounced off the back. So that was the last time my mother allowed me on the scooter. So I like those. I always thought, you know, when I get older, I'm going to get a motorbike and a scooter. I love bikes as well. And years later, it was again martial arts wise. I've been around the martial arts a long time, and all I do was living, eating, breathing, gym. Living, eating, breathing, gym. And I thought I started playing havoc with my mental state, just living in the gym all the time. And I thought I need to, you know, get out of it. So I bought a bike, bought a little 125, and then from the 125 got a bigger bike and a bigger bike. Eventually, a big Harley. I ended up riding my bike, and I thought, I want to get away on weekends, because all my life comprised of at the time was like teaching the week, see the kids a bit on a weekend, and then every Saturday you'd be at a cage fight. So you'd be all around fighting. Honestly, it was that bad. I'd be waking up in the night, punching and doing chokes on the missus. You know what I mean? So I was like, right. So she'd be like, you know, so I thought I need time out. So I started going to some bike rallies and on a weekend, and it was great fun. But they only, you know, they'd be drinking, partying. I enjoyed the bike crowd, was great, but it was like heavy rock for 3 days. And I'm like, God, I never listened to heavy rock growing up. I did in the 80s. I listened to, you know, ska music, two-tone, Jamaican ska, soul music. I never listened to heavy rock and all this for 3. So for 3 days, I decided one time, I said, my wife, she rode bikes as well. I said, you know what, I'm off to a scooter rally in Cleethorpes. And she was like, what? I said, yeah, I'm going to go along. So I went on the bike. I thought, I like this, to play my type of music. And I love the Lambrettas and Vespers anyway. So I decided to drag her along. And next thing, I got a scooter. I remember my wife, Marie, said, what you got one of those hair dryers for? You know? And I got an old scooter. And next thing, she took to it. And I kept my motorbike. Never get rid of my bike. She got rid of her bike, and she got a scooter as well. And before you know it, we were on rallies every weekend, up and down the country on these little... I don't think Italian shopping trolleys, what they were designed for, were designed for going from Doncaster to the Isle of Wight, or down to Mersey Island off the coast of Essex, and then party 2 days and come back. But that's what we did. We went everywhere on them. And from that, on the scooter scene, I got a good love of music and stuff. I always loved music, brought up around it with my mum and dad a lot. And I started DJing a bit. And next thing, the DJing led to people asking me, can you DJ for me at events? And then before you know it, I'm DJing at events. And I was just DJing. I was over in England last week DJing at a massive event, Bridlington Scooter, end of season scooter rally, with thousands of, well, probably about 4,000 or 5,000 people turn up all Bridlington. And I was over there for 3 days DJing. I went over, spent 22 hours on the decks Friday, Saturday, played everything from Northern Soul, ska, reggae, punk, all the 80s stuff. It was great. And around all the scooters. I still love all the scooters. I've got scooters over here as well. We brought them over here with us from England. And I've already been in touch with the local scooter scene here. And the thing is that, yeah, so the scooter thing as well, by the way, that was always quite a Yorkshire thing, by the way. It was, yeah, it was massive in the north where we were, all the Northern Soul and the scooters. So it was something which I took to.
Mick, there's just one thing that you've done your Sticks and Stones thing, but because of your knowledge and stuff like that, have you got an idea when you might do another book, or is it still in mind that you might or might not do another one?
I've got another idea for 2 books and another biography to come. Wow. A part 2 of the biography. Basically, is they say everybody's got a book inside them. I had a book and a half, but I had to edit it down. And edit it down, I edited out some brilliant stories I'd have loved to put in. But I also decided I want to live a bit more before I can, do a part 2 biography. I thought, hold on here. People sometimes rush and bring out, you see younger people especially doing a biography. Yeah. And they do, I've done a biography at 22. I'm like, what? And then they do another one at 25. You think, you've not even lived a bit yet. So I want to do my biography I've just released that one 3 years ago. So, and it's still going well. So I want to get another one. There's still plenty to do the part 2. And we actually worked on the title of it as Odds and Sods. That was what my wife says. The bits left over were odds and sods. Right? Yeah. So, and that's even got a double meaning over here in Ireland, because a sod over here refers to a sod of turf, what you put on your fire. Okay. Yeah. So she said that's a working title there for the Harper, but I want to give it a bit more before the second biography comes out. I've been doing a lot more traveling. I've traveled to Thailand, Vietnam, I've gone to Laos. These places I've gone training and everything. And I've got some more countries to visit for training. So I want to do that biography when I've completed that journey of these other countries I want to wish to train, and I'll put it all together in that book. Apart from that, I'd like to do a book on, I've got another 2. One to do with Sifu Larry. It's more to do with like Sifu Larry, like a tribute. And I'm working on that. That one is taking notes and things. That's more of a tribute, not a biography or anything. It's more of a tribute. And I've got a good few ideas for that. There's no time span on them. And another one in conjunction with that one is I want to do one to do with Irish stuff. But basically the Ireland I know and a lot of others don't, the way I was brought up.
One thing we haven't touched on in this interview is the effect of Bruce Lee. How do you feel Bruce Lee affected you, or did he? You know, some people didn't get affected by Bruce Lee. So do you feel as though the Bruce Lee thing got to you at some point or not?
100%. I got my first little Bruce Lee patch bought for me by my mother when I was about 5. And I went outside. We was outside the Corn Exchange in Doncaster. I think I'd been to see a wrestling match with my dad. And we got this little patch. And it was like gold and black. Put it on my little denim jacket, Bruce Lee. Now, at this age, all I knew of Bruce Lee when I was younger, and, you know, getting thing was that all you saw in the streets were these big posters of Bruce Lee with the nunchucks or something, and a big X. And all to me, the X meant I wasn't allowed to see it. Right? Well, they had that. But I knew it was hard. It was tough. He could take new nonsense. But all I had was that. Those posters, Bruce Lee. And I knew Bruce Lee's a tough guy. Now, how could I make a connection just through posters? And here's one what I mentioned in my book, and it's really bizarre how this happened. My dad would take me to watch wrestling or watch it on TV, you know, the world of sport type stuff. We'd see Big Daddy, Giant Haystacks, and often he'd take me down to see the ones in the marketplace. And we go down to market, the Corn Exchange, watch wrestling. And there was one wrestler I seen, and his name was Sammy Lee. And you see the second name there?
Yeah.
Sammy Lee. Now, I see Bruce Lee on the poster and Sammy Lee. My young mind wasn't that thing. All I knew that these Lee fellas were tough and they could kick ass. And Sammy Lee used to do all these punches, kicks and everything. So that was Lee. So I didn't know if he was a brother, a relative, the same guy. It was Sammy Lee. So I had to watch this. Now, one bizarre thing of Sammy Lee is that his true name was Satoru Sayama. And in Japan, he wrestled under the name Tiger Mask. And in the UK, he wrestled under the name Sammy Lee. Now, Tiger Mask taught a guy, Satoru Sayama, Tiger Mask, taught a guy called Yoinaga Nakamura, who was a JKD fan and wanted to train JKD. Yoinaga Nakamura came over to the Inosanto Academy to learn JKD and taught Larry Hartsell and Dan Inosanto Shuto wrestling. And Larry taught me Shuto wrestling. So I was learning the same art 30 years later from Larry Hartsell that I saw the founder do in the ring when I was a 5-year-old. How bizarre was that one?
Wow, fantastic.
So I was influenced by Bruce Lee more than I thought were Lees. And then when I got to a certain age, like I said, she was the only certain martial arts films we could watch. And you'll laugh at this one, actually, because my mum, we'd only allowed to watch Game of Death. And then Way of the Dragon, we put it on, and my mum was like, right, fast forward that, the nude scene in that one, fast forward that. Way of the Dragon, when he meets the prostitute. I don't remember shit. Right, oh, what's that? Turn it off. I'm like, no, mum, fast forward, it's all right. Like, carry on with the rest of the film. So my main film I'd seen was Game of Death, the first one. Then I think I'd seen Way of the Dragon. And then, quite famously, in Yorkshire, Enter the Dragon was shown on the TV uncut by accident, where it was cut everywhere. It was cut everywhere in the UK except Yorkshire. They left all the uncut nunchuck scenes, everything. So I got to see that uncut. And my mother, like, here's a funny one for you, because like she was born in India from like going Portuguese descent, but her father was Irish, and there were Irish settlers in India working railroads, army, military, and on her side there were military, like British forces over there who were stationed over, and Irish people were part of the British forces stationed over in Ireland. And they actually named for their community, what they give themselves, by the way, is Bombay Paddies. That's what they call themselves over there. My mother said we're Bombay Paddies. But anyway, she had an Irish father, and she was born in India, so she wanted to go back, and she'd not been back for years. My father met my mother out in India when he was working in mining. He was involved in mining exploration, and it's always funny because my father had told people when he was older, you know, he'd speak to nurses even in his 70s, 80s, and he said, I think your father's telling us a bit of a fib. I said, what? He says, he told us that he knew Mother Teresa. And that I says, yes, he did. He worked out there. He knew Mother Teresa. He worked out. Yeah, he did. He did. He actually helped work on her convents and all this. He'd been all over the place. So anyway, back to the martial arts bit. I said to my mum, I said, oh, wow, can you get me Game of Death uncut? And she was going back to India for a visit. She says, yeah, I'll bring it back. So I was like, wow, I can't wait. I'm going to see Game of Death uncut. Nunchuck scenes with Dan and Asanto uncut. Then she came back. Mom, can't wait. She goes, here you go. She says, I thought you've seen Game of Death, so I didn't bother getting you that. I got you Game of Death 2 instead. And one of them where I didn't want to be appeal ungrateful. I thought, oh yeah, thank you. Why didn't you get that one? Oh, thank you, Mum. Yeah. Oh, Game of Death 2. No, I had to wait about a further 25 years to see Game of Death uncut with the yellow nunchuck scene and all that. So it was crazy. But yeah, I was very inspired by him, because what I seen to me on a deeper level was, as I got older, and people don't realise when they watch the films, you got to really watch them back, is that he took a lot of racial abuse. And he reminded me I actually could see that side, because there were some times I was not accepted when I was younger. Not all, but some people in Ireland never accepted me as Irish, you see. And some people in England never accepted me as English. So I was between it, you see. So Bruce Lee was never accepted as Chinese by some, and never accepted as American by some. So I could empathise with what he was going through. And because he got a lot of racial stuff, and people watch the film back, they say, oh yeah, he saw the kicks in the front. I said, no, listen to what he's doing. You watch, like, you know, Fist of Fury, and you know, Way the Dragon, plays that way, he sees the sign and they say, no dogs or Chinese allowed. And he kicks it and he said, we are not the sick men of Asia. Because that's the way they were portrayed for years, the sick men of Asia. And he was fighting back against that stereotype, against that racist, ingrained racism. So I could emphasize with that what he was doing. And I thought, well, you know, I've been getting that same type of thing. So I understand where he's coming from. You know what I mean? I was getting stuff, all types of racist stuff when I was younger. It was unbelievable. So I said, I know where he's coming from. And the way he fights back is he gets respect by fighting with his fists, his punching, his kicking. But he's also a great thinker. He knows how to put people in the place using that. And that was something I also saw my father doing. He was very good with words, but also good with his fist, but very good with his words, you know, and that was something I could see. So, yeah, definitely very influenced by Bruce Lee.
Mick, that was absolutely marvellous. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon,
guys. Take care.
See you well.